Joakim Helenius on see mees, kes siin kohe teie ette astub. No Joakim on siin pikalt Eestis olnud, omal ajal töötanud üsna kõrgetel kohtadel, väga kuulsates investeerimispankades, Goldman Sachsis näiteks. Investeerinud Eestisse, no ma julgeks öelda, 10 miljoneid eurosid. Minu jaoks natuke ka visionääri moodi, ma mäletan äriplaani laval teda juba aastaid enne, kui see teema üldse nagu ajakohaseks nagu muutus Eestis, rääkis ta Tallinn-Helsingi tunnelist. No jumal sa teab, kas ta tulebki, aga ta on selline julgete avaldustega varem silma torganud. Ja Joakim täna räägib sellest, et kuidas siis rikkaks saada. Et ma ei ole kokku löönud, et keegi võib küsida, palju ta netoväärtus on. Et kui varadest kohustused maha võtta, aga kindlasti see Joakim oskab sellest rääkida. Joakim, floor is yours, please.
Thank you. So, thank you very much, Meelis, and it's a great honor to speak to all of you today. I guess the reason I was asked to speak about a topic such as this one is that I've invested a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've been around for a long time, as Meelis was saying, and got the odd investment right as well. So at least I have a lot of experience. And if I had to go back in time and say, what did I do wrong? How could I have been even much more successful? I would say that what I did wrong was I failed to listen to advice. I did not really take on board what other much more experienced people were telling me. I had to do everything myself. Trial and error, and there was a lot of error involved in this trial and error. So had I done a better job of listening to the advice given by people who had more experience, those close to me, but also those maybe speaking at a conference, I probably would have made fewer mistakes and I would be far better off today than I am. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to pass on to you a few of the lessons I've picked up over the years and a little bit of my sort of view of what it takes to be successful. I don't know about getting rich, but if you're at least successful, then you're on the way to having a better life than of course you would have if you're not successful. So it never hurts. In terms of looking around here, I would say that the average age of the attendees at this gathering is substantially lower than mine. So I maybe had an easier life. My generation lived in an era where things were constantly getting better. We always, when I was younger, I'd never even stopped to consider that things could get worse. I always assumed that things will always get better, and question is only how to make the most of the opportunities. Today, we live in a world. You live in a world where you will be economically, professionally active in this world for a long, long time to come, and it's a world that is extremely challenging. Starting with climate change through to increasing geopolitical stress in the world, population problems, Africa's population exploding, Europe's population declining, demographics. There are so many challenges, so many problems facing the world today that I don't envy you. But of course, problems also open up opportunities. And it's these opportunities that you should be looking to latch onto. The most important, the way I'm going to handle this is I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about the most important investment you'll ever make, which is the investment into yourself and your career, your life. I'm going to talk after that a little bit about how you might be able to leverage your experience, your professional experience, your education into becoming a shareholder in something that could make you rich. And that's not by buying into it. That's by, I'll talk about, how to do it. I will follow up after that by talking a little bit about why everybody should have a private investment portfolio, whether it's a smallish one or a larger one. I believe that your generation will need it much more than my generation needed it. I will talk about how arguably to structure such a portfolio, and if there's any time left over at the end, I will talk a little bit about how I see global trends and how they might affect you, your lives, your investments, and your opportunities. To start off with now, how do you invest into yourself? Well, some of what I'll say is just obvious, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But basically, what you and I'm assuming, I'm sure correctly, that I'm facing a crowd of people with better than average education and higher than average ambitions. Education is the key to whatever it is you do with your life. But the biggest decision you will take is how you convert that education into a job. And the reason is not that one job pays you, 3,000 euros a month and another job pays you 2,000 euros a month and you want the one that pays you 3,000 euros a month. No. The reason is that you want to find a job that basically is you. A job where you feel at home. A job where you basically can become better than others at doing whatever that job is. When you become very, very good at your job, money will follow, salary will follow, salary increases will follow. What you should be looking for, especially at the early stage of your career, is how to identify the sort of job that fits you. Once you find this sort of a job, you should persevere. You should be patient. You might get offers from time to time, then somebody offers you an extra 200, 300, 400 euros a month. Don't go for those offers if it involves giving up on what you are good at. If you know that you're good, if you know that your importance to your employer is increasing every year, if you know that your ability to perform in your job versus others doing similar jobs is getting better every year, stick with that job. In the longer run, you will make much more money than if you jump jobs for an extra 200, 300, 500, or even 1,000 euros a month. So find a job that you not only like, but where you are good. And if you do that, you will find that your importance to your employer will get bigger and bigger, and your employer will start to talk to you about what it takes to hang on to you. At that stage, you don't need to worry about money. However, this is not going to happen over a period of 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months. Persevere. Be patient. It takes time. You're not going to become God's gift to mankind or your employer in a short period of time. You will need to show and prove loyalty and performance. Now, the question of why should you do that? Why should you persevere? Especially if maybe you are aware of the fact that there are jobs elsewhere that pay more. You might not like them, they might not be exactly what you think you're best at, but they pay more. Why not go for those jobs? Well, if you are ambitious, and if you're willing to take a longer term view of what you want to do with your life. The fact is that if you have the right job and you're working for the right sort of employer, I believe that we live in a world where a lot of so-called startupping will increasingly be done by companies that want to attract and retain the best people. My own company, Trigon, for example, we're in good shape. We can afford to give people the chance of becoming partners in new businesses that we start up that are related to what we know, what we're doing, what the businesses we're active in. So when I was listening to Ranno, he said something very interesting. He said that when he looks at people who come in looking for money from his fund, if it's in a sector that he knows very, very well, he is much more skeptical maybe than he is if it's in a sector that he doesn't know so well. Because the better you know something, the more you know about a sector, the more you realize how risky it is. Business is risky. Every sector is risky. Success, in my experience, over the long period of time that I've been active in business, success, however, comes in those sectors that you know inside out. If you are a media man and you want to do something new, you have a great startup idea, I very much hope it's in the media sector and not in growing grasshoppers or something, because you're much more likely to succeed in your own sector, in something that you are very good at, that you have inside knowledge about. The world today is full of young people who want to be entrepreneurs, who want to do startups. However, they normally go off and try to be startup entrepreneurs before they know enough about the particular sector, the particular idea that they're looking to start up a business in. In fact, when you think about it, wouldn't it be better for a country like Estonia if existing businesses would be encouraged to help exceptionally talented people working in these businesses to start up new businesses that were related to the existing businesses? The likelihood that these new startups would be successful is probably much, much higher. Rein Ranno again rubbished the claim that 90% of startups fail. I don't know. You hear so many statistics. I don't know what percentage of startups succeed and what percentage of startups fail. But we do know that the vast majority of startups fail. And many of those who don't fail don't particularly succeed either. But what we do know is that, and this is based on American statistics, if you have started a successful business before, the chance that you will succeed is 2 times higher than if you are a startup founder who has failed before. Which again doesn't mean that you should not try if you have failed, because even if you have failed as a startup entrepreneur, you are still much more likely to succeed with a new startup than if you're a first-time startup entrepreneur. So there is nothing wrong in trying to start up new businesses. I think it's going to become more and more important for the economies of countries like Estonia, well, the Western world as a whole. But let's look at what it takes to be a successful startup entrepreneur, and let's try to promote that. And I, for my part, through Trigon will, and I am working on trying to give exceptional people who show loyalty and perseverance and who basically become indispensable to the business, they will be given the chance to become shareholders, either in new businesses or existing businesses that are part of what I'm doing. The key here, and I just want to re-emphasize this, is that you need to know what you're doing in order to be successful at work. Go and find yourself a job that you like, and you will learn what it takes to know what you're doing. When you know what you're doing and you do it well, you will become indispensable to your employer, especially if it's a smaller, more entrepreneurial business. Working for, I don't know, Swedbank is probably not going to do it, but there are plenty of businesses in Estonia where you can build up, as it were, personal equity in the business, making it attractive for the owners of the business to give you a chance to become a shareholder in starting something new that might be hugely successful, and that could be driven by you. But be patient. Don't think it's all going to happen overnight. Now, moving on to the question of investments, financial investments. We live in a world where, which again is very different. You live in a world which is very different from the world that I, grew up in, or my early career took place in. Because I lived in a world where almost everybody I knew assumed that somehow there was going to be a pension that was going to guarantee them a decent life once they retired. This was based on the fact that the economies in the Western world were growing pretty fast, and everybody assumed that this was going to continue into ad infinitum. Today, it's not so, nobody can be so sure of exactly how the global economy will do over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. At the same time, we face a demographic crisis in the Western world, meaning that we're not having enough kids, although my son is sitting there in the front row, so I'm doing my bit. We're not having enough kids, which means that there's going to be, every year, as it were, more people who are, in what might be called retirement age that need to be funded one way or the other by an ever smaller part of the population. Now, this shouldn't be a problem. What's the obvious solution? We work longer, and we set aside a bigger part of our earnings with the help of the state so as to save for our pensions. It's obvious. And, of course, we have extremely competent politicians who understand this and therefore have decided to reform our pension system to take away this forced saving, because they think that, hey, 20 years from now, we'll just raise taxes or whatever, and it's not my problem anyway, because I'll be long retired by then. So we have basically ended up in a situation, I don't know how the pension reform will end up, what will end up happening, but it's pretty clear that you mustn't assume, even now when you're young and you don't really think a lot about your retirement and your pension, you mustn't assume that there will be somebody else somewhere, the state or some sort of a second pillar pension fund system, that will secure your retirement. No, you have to do it yourself. If you don't do it, there might be nobody doing it. So, what is investing about? I would argue, investing is about securing your future. Even before you retire, if you have a solid investment portfolio, you will live a happier life, because you're not going to be worrying when you get to the age of 45, 50, 55. You're not going to be spending half your time worrying about what happens, when you retire. So investing, financial investing, is about securing your retirement effectively and your family. Getting rich is about investing into yourself, making sure you're in the right job, and trying to figure out whether or not sticking to that job might give you a chance at an equity stake in a new business that your employer will start up. Or if it's not your employer, you might have built up enough know-how to do it yourself. So, okay, investment makes sense. We should all have an investment portfolio. How do we go about building an investment portfolio that makes sense? You can read, I mean, there must have been, you know, a few billion books written about how to invest. So, you know, who am I to stand here and tell you, you know, how to build up and structure an investment portfolio? I don't know, but as it's part of my speech, I'll give it a shot. I think first and foremost, and this is just the way I look at it, everybody here should take the view that over the next few decades, assuming you're on the younger end of the spectrum, you need a solid core of property in your investment portfolio. It doesn't mean that you have to buy an apartment immediately, you know, taking up huge amounts of debt in the process, but in your longer term planning, you should aim to have property, because it's at least property in big cities like Tallinn, which are unlikely to, you know, have a declining population. It is one of the safest investments. It might not make you a millionaire, but it's also unlikely to totally disappear in terms of value. It's a good core to have. But on top of this core, you need to look for more. Of course, you know, we all talk about, you know, what's available. I mean, we have you know, bonds, we have equities, we have, of course, funds that invest into equities, funds that invest into bonds. We have private investments, such as you know, venture capital investments, angel investments, friend and family and fools investments. All kinds of opportunities to invest our money, even smaller amounts of money. My own way of seeing it, as we stand here now, and then, you know, of course, over 5 years, 10 years, whatever, things might look different. But at the moment, I don't see why anybody should invest into bonds per se. Government risk-free bonds offer no return. If interest rates ever start to rise, the value of these bonds, if they're longer-term bonds, will fall. Why on earth put money into bonds? I just don't understand it. I can see why some big institutional investors have to have part of their portfolio in bonds as a sort of liquidity measure and so forth. But for a private investor to invest into bonds just doesn't make sense. Somebody might say, well, what about junk bonds? You know, low credit bonds. Well, yeah, they give a higher return, but the professionals who invest into junk bonds, they do it because they know exactly what they will do if the company runs into trouble. They analyze these bonds from the point of view of how much can you extract in terms of value from these companies if they go bankrupt. Private investor is unlikely to be able to do that, and if the company goes bankrupt that has issued the bonds, certainly these private investors will not be in a driving seat when it comes to restructuring the company or extracting value from the company. So my advice to you is avoid bonds, stick to equities, and in many cases, private investments. Equities. Well, equities are very popular. Everybody thinks they're very good at picking shares. And everybody thinks that they, not everybody, but people like you who are much more experienced and educated than the average person, you have, I believe, on average, a belief that you can pick and choose shares. And I think in many cases this is the case. But what I have learned in my life is that unless you are very focused, you're not gonna be very good at stock picking. In other words, you know, if you want to start picking stocks in America, big liquid market, lots of information available on every company that's listed in America, you know, you can go and start reading up on them or whatever. You're gonna know about this much about the companies you invest in compared to the professional investors who do it as their job. they're going to know so much more about the company that you think you understand. You're going to be whipsawed. I mean, whatever happens to the share price is going to be a function of what these professional investors decide to do. You're just in for the ride. You might be better off playing the lottery, as we all heard about a few days ago. Somebody won, was it 12 million or something? So it's not quite a lottery game, because a lot of you guys are very good at this, but it's, I would argue there's an element of luck involved in investing into companies that you do not know inside out. If you have the time to become professional, either work for somebody who does it, a company that is manages funds or something, or if you just devote your entire time, or at least spare time, to focusing in on some subsectors of the equity market, maybe the Tallinn market or something, yes, there you might be successful, because you might end up knowing more about listed companies in, let's say, on the Tallinn exchange than most professional players active in the market, because there aren't many of them. So if you really want to do private investing, do stock picking, try to find some niche sector or geography or whatever, and focus on that. And and then time will show whether or not you're successful. But if you really don't think that that's what you want to do with your spare time, if you'd rather go out and meet friends and party and stuff, then probably you should be looking at funds, and you should be trying to choose the sort of funds that might outperform, because we're talking here about long-term investing. With an eye on your eventual retirement. So just to do a little bit of advertising, the Trigon Asset Management New Europe Fund, which is focused on the Central and Eastern European region, basically the ex-socialist members of the European Union, has, over the last 10 years, it's been the best performing in its sector, and it's outperformed the index by 94% over the last 10 years. It would have been a lot better to have simply bought that fund 10 years ago than to try to stock pick and maybe underperform the index by 20%, which is what an individual investor most likely, there are always exceptions, but most likely would have done. One last little piece of advertising. We're also next month, I think, launching a fund that will have 0 management fees. The only management fees will come from a share in the profits, as it were. I think it's the first time, at least in Estonia, that anybody's launching a 0 management fee fund, equity fund. So whether it's equities or, for that matter, private investments, funds are often a better way of investing your money over a long period of time than doing it directly, but it might not be as much fun. So I'm not saying don't do direct investing, because it might be a great hobby to have, but I'm just saying if you do, don't expect to outperform good professional managers. And the more niche a market is, the more likely you are to be able to find managers who can outperform the index. The bigger the market, to try to get somebody to outperform the Nasdaq's or Dow Jones indices, that's difficult. But these smaller indices like New Europe or some sectoral indices or whatever, there a good manager might be able to consistently outperform. In terms of just very briefly, private investments, it's a hobby. If you really like it, do it. It's very risky. More likely than not, you will lose your money. Therefore, clearly, it makes more sense to have a portfolio than to just pick individual stocks. Again, the reason you're likely to underperform, the reason you're likely to lose your money, is because more likely than not, you'll be investing into something you know very little about. To be successful in investing, you have to know more about whatever it is you're investing into than almost everybody else. That's when you have a good chance of being successful. It's no guarantee of success, but it's what makes it more likely that you will be successful or outperform, as it were. Now, I think I'm out of time, so I'm going to leave out this trends section. And okay. Okay, well then I'll just say a few words about the trends that I believe will be governing the world that we live in, and that we will be living in over the coming 10, 20, 30 years. First and foremost, however much, every time you pick up a newspaper or turn on, the internet or whatever, however much you read about coronavirus, COVID-19, that's not the real challenge. The number one challenge we are facing going forward is climate change. Climate change will change everything. It's going to change the whole world we live in, and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse fast. And as we go forwards, the political pressure to basically regulate, tax, figure out subsidies that somehow help to contain the pace of climate change, that political pressure to do that is going to be massive, and it's going to get greater and greater and greater. We live here in Estonia. This is a typical summer's day. We might not think that there's anything really wrong with the world, but trust me, when you start looking at the mega statistics, at what's really happening in the world, it's bad. The extremes is where we see it the most. So the really cold parts of the world, the really hot parts of the world. Rain patterns are shifting. Entire districts and entire huge parts of the world will become increasingly uninhabitable. It's going to become increasingly difficult to grow food. Africa is going to be particularly hard hit, also India. What will that mean eventually when we have billions of people and populations that are growing like crazy, increasingly not being able to feed themselves? One can only imagine. So climate change is something that will, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, will be you guys will be talking about very little else. Artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and generally speaking, IT-related applications, innovations, whatever, where, of course, Estonia has been very successful, especially in the startup sector. That's obviously going to be important. It is important, but it's not going to grow in importance. But it's just something that, is there. And you don't, to understand what's going on in, let's say, in the wider IT sector, is not just about understanding where the next IT startup might come from. It's about understanding how business in general will change. So we have to live with this. We have to understand it. We have to invest into understanding it. Into ourselves. Pace of global convergence. We have now for 20, 30 years lived in a world where everyone, and I think most of you, are assuming that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, emerging markets, on average, are going to be much closer to us in terms of their living standards. And this has been the case now for 20, 30 years. Look at China, India, wherever you look, you have emerging markets that have been catching up. And the general assumption we have had is that this will continue. A lot of investing has gone into the idea, financial investing has gone into the idea that the emerging markets will catch up with the developed world and will grow much faster than the developed world. Personally, I think we have come to a paradigm shift in this. This will change. And unfortunately, because it's going to lead to enormous problems in terms of how to deal with, 5/6 of the world's population that is no longer catching up with the West. The reason for this is that, and it's also to do with, let's say, what we're talking about when we talk about IT and so forth, scientific advances. The value, the price of knowledge, of scientific knowledge, economic knowledge, and so forth, is rising, as is the price of capital, availability of capital, is rising versus the price of labor and resources. So in the longer run, oil and metals and all these sort of resources that were driving the boom in the emerging markets, these prices will not rise as fast as the price of, knowledge. Look at how the global stock markets are recovering after certainly the first phase of the coronavirus crisis. We all know that technology stocks have reached and made new records, whereas traditional economy stocks are lagging, badly lagging. This is a way in which the markets are showing us what's happening in the world. It is technology, it is scientific know-how that will drive the way the economies grow and develop from now on. And this means that the developed world, the Western world, Europe and America, will no longer be growing necessarily slower than the emerging markets. At the very least, the difference in the growth rates at which the growth rates are converging will slow down dramatically. So we are in the right place. This is where the future will be made, not in China, not in Africa, not in the emerging markets, not in Russia, not in South America. The emerging markets that basically have lived off oil and metals and other resources and cheap labor, they will be having some very tough times. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Joakim Helenius. Actually, we do have some time for questions. Te võite esitada, ma usun, küsimused nii inglise kui eesti keeles.
Ma saan ka eesti keelest aru. Ma vabandan, et kõne oli inglise keeles, aga rikkaks saamise valem, üks osa sellest on inglise keele oskus.
Nii, härra Punases saab kohe mikrofoni.
Yes, thank you for the speech. What would you suggest as education for your son? In the longer run, 15 years ago, it was popular to study business and marketing and legal and that stuff. Now it's popular to study IT and programming and data science. Now, what next in 10, 20 years?
I myself studied in Cambridge University. I studied economics, which at the time was the cool thing to do. With Maxi here, we've been talking about, if he's smart enough the dream is MIT, some form of technology, whatever it may be. I think it's the hard sciences that matter. So he's lucky enough to be a Reaalkool boy. And if he does well there, then hopefully he can go to a top sort of technology university in the world. That's where I see the future lying. Knowledge, as I was saying earlier. Soft subjects, and economics even I would argue, is a pretty soft subject. Soft subjects are yesterday's story. It's the hard subjects that are tomorrow's story.
Nii, järgmine küsimus. Meil on muidu pärast Joakim valib välja, kes saab selle Michael Lewis ja Wall Streeti pokker hinnaga raamatu. Palun.
Joakim, I listened to your speech and I realized that I've done a lot of things in my life wrong. But what would your advice be for those people who want to start up their own business? And obviously in many of these cases, you can't keep your own investment portfolio and do your own business. You have to sacrifice something to start up something new. So what's your advice for the people who want to become entrepreneurs themselves?
Well, my advice, as I was sort of implying in the speech, is is that if you feel really confident and you have some sector that you know a hell of a lot about, you're just very knowledgeable about this thing, and you have a lot of money saved up, go and try to set up a business on your own. But it's not easy. For the first 2 years after I set up my own business, I didn't take a single paycheck. It was all just paying money out of my pocket, not only for me, but all the other people who worked for me. So starting up your own business alone is really tricky. That's why my strong advice is that if you want to become a shareholder, if you want to become an owner of a company, you know, I would argue to have a 10% in a company that becomes a super success is a damn sight better than having 100% of a company that just costs you all your savings and, you know, either maybe fails or at least doesn't take off in a big way. And, you know, the question, therefore, I would argue, is how can you find, you know, who's going to give you a deal where you can get 10% in a startup that is basically funded by somebody with deep pockets, and you know, where in this you know, the group that is starting up this business maybe has a lot of know-how that can support this new business, so that it's dependent not only on you alone, but on the knowledge and the financial backing of like a bigger group. I think that's the future. I mean, I really believe that the probability of such a business, if you yourself are, you know, really, you know, you really are the right guy to do it, and then you are either more likely working in that business already, or you know, but you find a business that is willing to back you, and they say, okay, listen, you know, you can have 10%. You don't have to really risk your savings or anything. We'll give you 10% because it's your idea. You're willing to commit to it. You're willing to maybe, you know, work the first 2-3 years, you know, in this business, taking a lower salary and so forth. You know, we'll back you. Now, that's what I would advise.
And the last question goes to...
I wanted to get your ideas about universal basic income as a trend, and whether it would be a big thing in the future as we're moving towards more automation and robotics. Thank you.
Well, excellent question, and I don't believe in it, and I don't believe it for you know, a couple of reasons. One is that it doesn't seem to me that the Western world is short of jobs. So yes, you know, automation is there. I mean, the number of people working in industry has dropped dramatically. I mean, it used to be when I was young, I think, you know, half the population or whatever worked in industry. Now it's you know, it's maybe 10-15%. Just like agriculture, you know, back in 100 years ago, it was maybe 70-80% of people working in agriculture. Now it's maybe 2 or 3%. And you would think, you know, what's everybody else doing? Funnily enough, our free market system is generating huge numbers of service sector jobs of all sorts, and everybody's complaining about a shortage of labor here in Estonia and most other Western countries. Now, you know, so I don't believe, I think, you know, if this universal basic wage, I think it would be a catastrophe. I mean, it would basically mean that people who otherwise, you know, who might not be, you know, the sort of people who are going to start up companies or whatever, but, you know, can still do a job, can still be useful in society. Instead, they'll just sit at home and drink beer or something. So I'm against it.
And well, and then the last short question, and yeah, the foreign stock to buy right now.
What, the foreign stock?
Yeah.
The foreign stock.
Beside Tesla.
Well, but over what time horizon? Are you talking long term or like a speculative short term? 5 years. Well, that's a long term. I would, funnily enough, I mean, because I'd go for Amazon.
You should. Okay, and the best question, and the book goes to who made the best question? This guy. Okay.
Raiko.
Ja Joakimile nagu kõigile teistele siis investori kaanepoiss.
Oh.
Handsome guy, huh?
Absolutely.
okei, aplaus.